Hi, this is Pamela McDaniel with Dynavistics, and Greenshades is joining us today. We'd like to welcome Greenshades and Rob. Rob is going to walk us through a fabulous new offering from Greenshades and show us how it can really give payroll the lift that your payees need and deserve. Rob, show us your new product.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And good morning, Pamela. Thank you guys for having us. Definitely appreciate talking to everybody here today. Going to talk a little bit about Greenshades and obviously our partnership with Dynavistics and why you would move to the cloud and starting with payroll. So a bit about Greenshades. We've been around since about 2002. This is our 20th year anniversary. I've been at Greenshades for about a dozen years now. So I'm old hat in the organization. Going to be talking a little bit about why you would move to the cloud to begin with, whether it's Greenshades or a different provider, and specifically how we work with Dynavistics, your partner of record, to make sure that you guys have the best available software out there on the market. So going to be talking through this deck here today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will be working through those towards the end of the session. Also, feel free to follow up with Pamela and her team to make sure that we answer anything that you have questions on, whether it's related to Greenshades compliance or taxes or anything else, right? So just a little bit moving forward here. I think I have a little bit about myself as a presenter. So like I said, I've been at Greenshades for about a dozen years, but I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I got a bunch of different animals, snakes and turtles and things of that nature. So, but have been around tax and compliance for the majority of my career, really started from the ground floor at Greenshades as employee number 22. So I have a lot of different experience with thousands of different companies and helped them move to the cloud and move to our portal pieces, as well as really our portal payroll option here, whether they're on GP or a different Dynamics line, or even outside of that space. We're really trying to take a more open-ended approach as we move forward, as clients migrate to the cloud, specifically for payroll or their ERP, et cetera. A lot of this presentation is really just kind of talking about what modern means in today's world related to payroll specifically. So just going through some of the risks and limitations and kind of having that all-in-one sort of view that we've had for so long, especially related to some of these legacy Dynamics lines, right? So how do you take advantage of what a standalone or modern payroll system might give you, the benefits of moving to the cloud, obviously, and some of the traits you might be looking for if you're looking for a new payroll provider, right? So moving to the cloud, right? Why is on-premise versus the cloud? The debate is over. I think everybody through COVID and through remote work has kind of understood it's necessary to be able to access these systems really from anywhere, whether that's on the end user side for your employees or for you as a possible administrator, or even on the IT side. We no longer want to rely on connecting to a specific server or having to connect through VPNs in a lot of these instances. And that still might happen in relation to your ERP or financial system. But so much of that, obviously, we're working to have access from home, no longer having to go into the office just to run payroll or just to touch the specific ERP, right? It accelerated a lot of that moving to the cloud option. So I think when we say the debate is over, I think everybody sees, why we need that immediate access and when we need it. And specifically, for payroll and HR information, it's critically important. If somebody's out there trying to get a loan or something's happening in their personal life, they need access to their pay record information, their W-2s, and a lot of people know Greenshades in the space because we've been doing those kind of solutions for a long time. And payroll is just as important, whether that's making changes to things like time off requests or actually needing to cut a one-off check for whatever the reason might be. Having access to that information and be able to execute it quickly wherever you are in the world is critically important right now, right? So whether that means secure, accessibility from everywhere. A lot of people, I think, believe being in the office, connecting to those servers, et cetera, makes things so much more secure. As we move to the cloud, having PII, personal identifiable information, is very secure information that everybody takes very seriously. But there is a lot of different ways to protect this data nowadays. And I think making sure it's secure from everywhere is critically important to Pamela's business model, my business model, and any other partner that you're working with today. So it really matters, how they are handling that security, which I'll touch on from the Greenshade side a little bit here as we move forward. But that's really, critically important for us as providers, not so much as you as the business entity anymore as it used to be, where there used to be a lot more walls, security needed from your IT teams. Now it's picking the appropriate provider that provides that security for you, right? So moving to the cloud might sound, easy, but there's a lot of considerations related to that security, the feasibility, the scalability of the platform that you're working with. I'll touch on some of those points as we move forward. But as you have these options that are connected to your ERP and you're thinking about an all-in-one system, it sounds, perfect to only use one system for everything, right? But that means you're not going to have specialization. You're not going to have all of the bells and whistles or a lot of the additional tools that might be out there on the market. And so many of these back office processes used to just be, specific to kind of one piece of what you were solving for. As in payroll, you were just cutting checks, you were just focused on, getting that check right and possibly handling taxes after the fact. And there were so many different providers for so many different pieces of it. Now payroll and HR are kind of synonymous, and making sure that information is up to date across that system is critically important, right? But if you're relying on that, then tying back continually to your finance and accounting package or to these other systems, there's a lot of integrations at play and syncs and things of that nature that you have to wait on. And your access to real-time data gets kind of removed in a lot of those instances, right? So why, having that all-in-one ERP kind of view mindset might not be the most modern mindset as we move forward, right? So thinking about payroll and possibly pulling it out of specifically your embedded ERP, still having it integrate possibly to the general ledger or some other key data points might make a little bit more sense. Decoupling that process might make it easier to move to the cloud if you're on an on-premise system, because payroll is now such a large back office process, right? And Greenshade specifically has been solving a lot of these back-end compliance issues for such a long time that we understand it's a critical process, right? And we've worked really hard to ensure that we have a streamlined, process for your payroll, your HR, and your IT admins. Whoever needs access to that system has the access they need, and you can touch and feel and move any of those items very quickly. And you're not doing things like duplicate entry. You're not touching an HR record and making an update on an employee record that's not going in to payroll, updating taxes appropriately, et cetera. A lot of that is exactly, what we've been solving for a very long time. So thinking about pulling payroll out first, it allows you to make larger financial decisions with that accounting package specifically, right? It might seem like a daunting task to move all of these processes at once to the cloud, but really decoupling them and having possibly payroll move to the cloud first, or your ERP move to the cloud first, it allows you a lot of flexibility on how you're going to move forward and how you're possibly going to scale your business, right? So talking about things like having best of both worlds, it's a centralized resource, but it's localized functionality, meaning wherever you need access to it, if you have the appropriate access, you can have access to that system. It's available anywhere, any time of day. Obviously, a big portion of what I've just talked about is things like remote work and what's happened through COVID, et cetera. But really, whether you're on a vacation, whether you're traveling, you need to run payroll at 2 a.m., not having to think about what that access looks like and making it convoluted related to servers and inside the office, et cetera, allows you the flexibility to have an appropriate work-life balance at times, but also meet critical needs of your business whenever you need to meet them, right? Talk about self-service related to Greenshades in our HR portal. It's what we're known for as far as posting pay stubs online, things like benefits enrollment, time entry, some of the big modules that we've been supplementing for other payroll systems for a long time. We've only streamlined those processes as we've moved more people to the cloud, but also moved more of our own internal processes to the cloud. It's been a big focus of ours internally. And then obviously Greenshades is well known in the compliance space. We have multiple certified payroll professionals on staff. We work with multiple CPAs. We, really focus on streamlining that compliance standard, but also allowing end user control around all those compliance levers as well. So as employees say, move states, have new W-4s filled out, those are approved, those are updating directly in payroll automatically. You're not relying on, again, duplicate entry, somebody updating a record, caring necessarily about the tax rates related to those different states yourselves. Those are all things that Greenshades is tracking continually. So when you're thinking about payroll and you're thinking about, moving to a modern system, whether it's Greenshades or something else out there on the market, you have to ask yourself, is there also a business case to be made for streamlining some of these processes, depending on how you've been handling them internally, right? And just kind of moving through the deck here, I will touch on the actual module itself towards the end, I think, of this presentation. I'll do a quick demo. So if anybody has any questions about what that looks like and what I'm talking about, I'll do a high level here at the end of this as well. So when you're out here shopping for a possibly cloud-based system, you're trying to modernize your approach, we've kind of dialed in on 5 specific traits. Obviously, there can be much more, and some of this can be driven by your own internal business needs. So you can always make adjustments to this, but this is really just high level thinking through, what am I looking for if I'm possibly going to be moving to a cloud-based payroll system and having that, remote access from anywhere. You're looking for somebody who has experience and expertise, right? Somebody who's been doing it for a long time, has a track record of continually improving their product, rolling out new features, rolling out new modules, new integrations as needed. Because as you scale and as our businesses get more modern and we all move to the cloud, our business needs are going to change and evolve, right? So if you are looking at a possible provider that's stagnant on the market and has been, quote unquote, one note possibly, that might not be the right fit as you think about this modern approach and moving to the cloud. Right. I talked on security a little bit. I have even more information later in this deck, but it's a priority. Obviously, we're touching payroll information, and especially moving this kind of information to the cloud. There's can be a lot of concerns, especially if you're dealing with multiple internal contacts. There's definitely some internal education that sometimes has to happen with these moves, right? So understanding the security of the provider that you might be working with, and also understanding, what your internal concerns might be, trying to address those as early as possible is definitely a key priority as you move to these modern systems, right? Superior support, so that everybody's heard, the horror stories of, some payroll companies specifically, but also we all personally have experience with, large, well-known names that not even in the space, just related to things like our electric, our cable, our internet, et cetera, and having poor support, right? When you are sometimes working with companies that are large or outsourcing things, et cetera, they get to a place to where that support can be second or third level, where you have to have a long period of wait, or there's not a dedicated person for you to reach out to and get things addressed, right? That's why it's critically important to work with businesses like Greenshades and Dynavistics, where we're making sure your needs are addressed as quickly as possible. We understand that you're dealing with critical business items, right? So having this superior support model and understanding what that might mean and what the needs of your business are is very important. And then compliance experts, we're touching payroll information. You have to care about taxes. There's a lot of HR compliance laws, a lot of PTO laws, depending on the state that you're in places like California, Pennsylvania, Ohio, et cetera. There's all kinds of, whether it's locality tax laws, things related to OT, things related to what needs to be on a pay stub or paycheck. There's a lot of boxes that need to be checked, especially based on where you're paying your employees and where your business is based. So not every payroll provider and not every software company, as you look at cloud options, has clients related to those states or has been dealing with compliance specifically. It might be focused, again, just on net to check, or as you're working with outsourced companies, there's even large outsourced companies that have a lot of these issues related to those states, localities, OT laws, et cetera, because they're complicated. They take a lot of development time, they take a lot of focus, and they take a lot of compliance liability for the company to address appropriately. If you're leaving that liability and some of those updates specifically to employers, right? What's the difference from moving from your legacy system to something that's new and modern, et cetera, if it's not streamlining some of those processes, right? So, and moving forward, just kind of elaborating a little bit on what that experience and expertise means. I touched a little bit, Greenshades, it's our 20th year anniversary. We started out really by building out answers for some of the most complicated process in payroll and HR, things like garnishments, PTO accruals, all the way down to generally payroll taxes across the board. And then we've only branched out and done more and more compliance related pieces, but that shows that we have the expertise in the payroll space, that we have the experts on staff, and that we care really about how we're servicing our clients. Many of our modules, and I would say the majority of our features, have come specifically from client feedback, right? So as you think about, working with any provider out here on the space and having, whether it's a single payroll reference or understanding the needs of your business, are you getting, the right answers internally when you're talking to them and when you're asking some of those questions, whether it's related to compliance or whether it's related to business process needs and how your company handles specific HR functions. It's very, very important to kind of go through those scenarios prior to purchase and prior to move. And you don't want to, drag out every objection scenario possible, because obviously, you're going to be handling different processes as you move to different systems. However, it's important that those companies know the language you're speaking and really understand how to address some of your needs, right? Referenceable accounts, a long list of happy clients. We have 4,000 plus companies under our umbrella that utilize our systems as parent companies. We help 35,000 plus actual corporate entities across America. And we are sending out millions of tax forms every year. And we have millions of employees logging into our portals every day, day in and day out, whether that's across time entry or seeing their pay stubs or seeing any payroll updates or information that happen post payroll, right? Cool. So just kind of moving through the deck here, I think a track record of innovation. I talked a little bit about how Greenshades actually builds new features and functionality, but that's easy to talk about. We're an in-house development company, meaning we're founded by 2 developers. A developer is still our CEO, and we're very engineering led. So when you think of these cloud-based payroll providers and you kind of understand how they got to where they are today, understanding really how they built out their processes, how they built out the actual modules themselves. Are they white labeling other companies? Are they just plugging in other providers and other third parties? And really understanding what you might be buying through that process. Are you buying, that company in their name, or are you buying something white labeled, or are you buying that company in their name plus 3 other possible providers as you go through that sales process? I think we've all, purchased software from a single provider, and then as you use it, somebody else's name pops up at times. That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? So how do they actually provide that innovation for their product, and how do they support it? All of that plays into what's their track record look like? Do they have an ever expanding portfolio of new services? Are they building that internally, or are they adding it on? Just understanding that, not necessarily making judgments in general, but you're going to have a business relationship with this cloud-based payroll company and having an understanding of where they're coming from. Greenshades, obviously, we're all in-house built. We do have marketplace partners. We understand that everything related to payroll and HR is a big umbrella that is ever expanding as people get to learning management systems and applicant tracking systems, et cetera. And we really want to be continually compliance experts, right? So we might not build some of those additional pieces, but we are definitely upfront and want clients to understand what we do cover and what is built internally versus what might be a marketplace partner that they can go out there and talk to. And a big portion of that is definitely just understanding what clients might be utilizing themselves and bringing into a new payroll system. It's constantly what we're trying to address, right? And we are always building out new functionality within our own products, always meeting the most up-to-date tax compliance needs as well, right? So ensuring the paycheck is right is baseline, but if you're looking for providers, what does next level look like to you? I think one of the easiest kind of sales questions that we might ask as individuals is really just understanding if you could wave a magic wand, right? What does the right process look like for your organization? What could you fix today? What's your largest pain point? You want to ensure you're asking yourself that as you're thinking about the company you might be working with here in the future, right? Security is a priority. I touched on this a couple of different times. Greenshades goes through a SOC Type 2 compliance audit. We do multiple other internal security audits. Obviously, we are a ever-growing company, and we're scaling very quickly right now and constantly adding in people. So we do internal audits, we do external audits, and we understand, the critical information that we're touching. When we say privacy is ensured at rest and in motion, that means if your employees are, punching in a new onboarding, going through new onboarding, punching in their social security number, et cetera, it's secure all through those steps, whether they're logging in for the first time or whether it is post-employment even, we keep that information secure. And obviously it is a primary building block of our business to ensure that that information is secure and private to you as individuals. And even when you might leave Greenshades, we have a deletion process. You can export that information, et cetera. And you want to ensure whatever provider you might work with here in the future is doing exactly that, right? What's their security look like? Are you answering your internal needs? And then what are they doing to ensure it's secure, right? Great. So touch on superior support a little bit, and I talked a little bit about how we might have personalized experiences related to it. But internally at Greenshades, we post-sale go through a pretty heavy support model. You have a dedicated implementation rep post-sale to actually go through that onboarding process with you, to import your historical information, get you up and running on our payroll module and all of the ancillary modules I've kind of referenced as well. And then post you getting comfortable in the system, you actually have a generalized support model where you will answer the phone anytime, but we do after hours support. It's essentially 24/7, because again, if you're cutting checks, it's 2 a.m., et cetera, and you need help, we want to be there to help you. We want to ensure that you have the assistance you need from our company. So understanding, how that might change the needs of your business as you move to a modern system, as you move to these cloud-based products and move some of your legacy options to the cloud. How are you going to change those processes? What is that going to look like for you? And what kind of support are you getting from that provider? So we offer a dedicated implementation representative through that actual initial implementation, generalized support model post that, as well as a dedicated tax service representative for our highest level tax offering. And that is obviously multiple dedicated contacts that you'd have access to, as well as a general support team. And there's no additional cost related to that. And I think that's a very important question to ask, regardless of what kind of provider you might be working with, is what do those support costs look like? What do those implementation costs look like? Specifically for Greenshades, it's all a part of that initial contract. We're not charging anything additional specifically for implementation. We're also not charging for any support. It's endless support, endless, no cost implementation. Through that process, no additional cost specifically for that tax service representative either. It's a part of that higher level tax service through Greenshades. So we understand kind of the information that we're touching. We understand you might need a dedicated contact, whether you're talking to a government agency and you need assistance there, or you need assistance in working with Dynavistics and ensuring you get historical information from whatever system you might be moving with. At times, you might not even have to be on the phone, right? You might not, we're just coordinating with whoever those partners or government agencies or whoever we need to work with to ensure that you're getting the best support from Greenshades as you move forward, right? So we're all based, our company is based in Jacksonville, Florida. We have remote employees everywhere now, but they're all onshore. We ensure everybody is a Greenshades employee. We're not outsourcing any of that at the moment or anything along those lines. That's through implementation all the way to our general support model. Everything is housed within inside Greenshades. Right. And the compliance experts, I touched on this throughout the presentation. I think it's important, right? As you think about payroll and payroll taxes, it's not just net to check, it's how do tax updates happen? Do you have to care specifically about your company's tax rates and how are those updated? Are they feasible and easy on a per EIN basis to make updates to? You want to ensure you have a go-to resource, right, with expertise in the space that can provide you that guidance, right? I think in general, we understand, right? Tax advisors and tax lawyers are definitely needed, but the way our system works, we're trying to move through as much information, many of those seamless updates as possible. We don't have to ask, you what the state level tax rate is or what you would expect, et cetera. We have an entire payroll engine that we sell to other payroll companies at times to ensure that they're up to date, right? We understand compliance and are very focused on it, right? Whoever you might be working with, you want to ensure that they're continually updating that platform and that you might not be waiting on quarterly, annual updates continually to be able to run taxes. I know that happens obviously in some of these legacy systems endlessly, right? So we are very focused on, in real time as they need to be updated on the day they need to be updated, we're updating them. You're not having to push out some update or download anything or go through any process to ensure that Greenshade software is compliant. We ensure that, and then if you're running payroll through us, you're compliant by nature by utilizing our software, right? Great. So just kind of wrapping up on this deck before I show a little bit of the product. The big points I'm touching on, obviously, is how do you look for a cloud-based payroll provider? Why does decoupling of that ERP and payroll make sense as you do move? Hopefully, I touch on all these points. If you have any questions, obviously, feel free to put them in the chat or hit up Dynavistics or myself directly, and we're happy to assist. But in general, you just need to do a little bit of homework when you're looking at moving to the cloud. There's a lot of reasons why. I think we all kind of understand why these modern systems are available and why this is, quote unquote, the future. It's been current state for multiple years now. And if you're still on one of these on-premise systems, it's really time to make sure that you're looking and handling these processes in the most streamlined fashion as possible, right? So we're dedicated to keep you on the right side of regulations. I think that's bolded for a reason. I talk about compliance, et cetera. But we started utilizing this term deskless workforce. And when you think about deskless, whether that's industry specific for things like healthcare, transportation, staffing at times, it's also true so much for how we're handling remote work, right? People are balancing their personal lives and remote work in a very different ways, and understanding that people need mobile access, they need access to these critical systems wherever they are, is very, very important for a modern business, right? Great. So just touching on high level Greenshades, touch on our quantity of companies that we work with. We have a high net promoter score as well. We send out surveys all the time. If you're a current client, I'm sure you've gotten one already. We want to know how we're doing. We want to know how you view this webinar as well. So if you want to give us feedback on that, we are happy to assist and kind of talk through any improvements we can make. But we serve millions of employees, right? Millions of forms going out from our company, thousands of companies across the US. So thank you guys. Related to this actual deck, I'm going to show a little bit of the actual software right now. And I'm going to give a general demo here. Let me switch screens real quick. You're going to see a blip, and then I am going to show a little bit of the actual homepage of Greenshades software and go through a quick high-level payroll demo. It's going to be very, very high level. Really just kind of touching on what the process looks and feels like. But if you do attend and schedule a one-on-one payroll demo with us, then you are eligible for or you will receive, I believe, a $50 Amazon gift card. So if any of this looks interesting, if you're shopping payroll modules right now, or you might be in the future and you have questions about it, please contact Dynavistics and we will reach out to schedule a demo with those guys. And you also get a $50 gift card through Greenshades. But high level, this is Greenshades Online. This is our base employer portal that you would be logging into from the admin side. If you're familiar with this, if you're a current client, if you're using Greenshades Online today, this is the same portal our payroll module is on. It's not going anywhere different. You don't have to log into different sites, different systems to run payroll. And especially if you're a current client with Greenshades, migrating that data even can be such a seamless experience through pulling information from any legacy system that we have a current integration with. And if we don't, we'll help you import it into our system. But it's the same process and site that you might be familiar with, whether you're using our HR pieces or even all the way down to our W-2s. This is the same place. So when we talk about how we update our software or how it's a focus of our business, it's because we're doing it on the entire same platform, right? So you might have heard or seen marketing information from Greenshades where we say things like unified platform, single solution, et cetera. We really mean that. And we're really focused on making sure the updates of our business are as efficient as possible. We're not only preaching to our clients and prospective clients about how they can move their processes to a system like ours. We're really focused internally on doing the same thing and trying to be as streamlined and efficient as possible. So this is Greenshades Online. I'm primarily going to touch on a pay run, but just quickly here talking about how the information gets to Greenshades. If you're familiar again with Greenshades Online at all, same portal, same process, a lot of the same screens, at least on the HR side, but we're pulling in this employee information, whether that they're going through our onboarding module or you're importing it in through historical information. Post that, there's some onboarding documentation that they'll complete, things like state W-4s, federal W-4s, direct deposit updates, profile information. Once they actually complete that through an onboarding step, that builds out an employee card. Same employee card that you're familiar with today, through any other payroll system, the same idea anyways. A little bit more streamlined through Greenshades, as we're going to compile all of the information for that employee under this actual card, where in other systems there might be an HR card, a payroll card. You might be updating some of the finance or tax information in other places related to that specific employee. Everything through Greenshades is going to be updated specifically on our site within this one employee card. And if it's happening on the employee side where they're submitting a new W-4, submitting a new direct deposit update, post approval, you're not having to come in this card to confirm anything. You're literally hitting one of those red check boxes that you saw on the prior screen, hitting approve, deny, or sending a message back to that employee. And then post approval, that's updating inside this employee card and will be updated in the next pay run that is scheduled for them to be in. So whether that's just their general employment information, their personal information that I talked about for things like their profile, them doing dependents for things like benefits enrollment that Greenshades handles, et cetera, or updating tax codes for things like garnishments, the state, work location, et cetera, you always have manual control over that. We're not outsourcing this information. Again, we're just trying to automate as much as possible, but that is still with your guidelines, your approvals, right? The settings that you set up with inside Greenshades Online and with inside our payroll module. So you're still driving all of this control, but you also have access to make any one-off updates as needed on a per employee basis and in an actual pay run. So this is the actual payroll screen. I showed a little bit of that employee screen, showed some of the HR tools and where those things would be updated, just seeing those red bubbles, and then showed the employee card itself and where you can make some of those updates. And then this is the actual payroll screen itself, right? So this is just giving you a quick overview of what's happening inside of payroll. So you can see the last payroll, what that might cost, what the net pay is, deductions, things of that nature, as well as any warnings that we might see. So I generally leave some of these up for demos, specifically just so you can see Greenshades is constantly doing those checks and balances across our payroll system. We're not expecting you to catch minor errors and annoyances and adjustments specifically just because you know your employee base. It's more so we want to make sure we're automating those errors and information as much as possible through our system. So you'll see as I actually open up this pay run in a second, you'll see some information bubbles that I kind of talk about as well, but same idea with those. We're just trying to give you guidance on what we're seeing in payroll, what may or may not be compliant or might not help you when you do your taxes, or if you need to address any errors that would actually help or clean up an actual pay run that you have open. We're not generally going to stop you from doing anything in that pay run though, because we understand that you know your business, you know what your employees need. However, we're going to give you these notifications, these pop-ups, these warnings that might need to be addressed to assist with that compliance, right? So I can see my upcoming pay runs with Greenshades. You have an ability to set up an unlimited amount of payroll schedules, and we do our pricing based on an employee count basis, similar to how our licensing works today. But as you look at other services, especially cloud-based services or anything like outsourced payroll, as people are constantly comparing to that, really understand what you're getting charged for, whether that's number of actual, pay runs that you're executing, number of companies that you have online, how you're handling the taxes through them, how often you might have to prepay that information. Greenshades isn't floating any of your money, whether that's for payroll or payroll taxes or anything all the way down to those liability payments. That's coming directly from your bank, and we actually have the ability to export or send an ACH file directly to that bank as well, or things like positive pay files if needed. However, sometimes when you're working with some of these other providers, that can happen. You have to really understand what your contract is that you're paying for and really understand what that licensing looks like. I think so many times I've talked to clients or prospective clients as they were looking at systems and might think that they're paying one number for a specific provider, but after they actually look at what they paid throughout the year, outside of obviously what general payroll or liability taxes might cost, it's a lot higher just because you have to think about, are you paying, to post pay stubs online or W-2s or for historical employee information if you have to pull it? Did you have to pay additional again for implementation or for any support, right? And then were they charging you additional money for additional pay runs or one-off checks that you had to cut through them or through the system? A lot of times the answer is typically yes, right? Is from what I've seen. So going through here, you can see some additional buttons. There's a special pay run. That's the same day check I was talking about. That's just if you need to run something off cycle. We have a whole bunch of reports I might touch on if we have time. You void checks directly in here. And we also have some calculators. Those are things like gross up calculators. If you need to see a pre-check for an employee, you want to run some options for them on what they might do with, say, a bonus or something like that. You have the option to do that through our system with those calculators. So I actually opened up a scheduled pay run that I have here right now. And what's happening in this pay run if you think through the process, employees obviously get onboarded. There's some general taxes and things of that nature that are set up from them filling out those W-4s and their address information, et cetera. And based on our settings and the rules that we set up through implementation, they'll then fall into one of these schedules that you might have open. And based on that schedule, any new employees are going to fall in here, as well as any changes that you've approved. So if they've changed, their work state location or have an updated W-4 that has been approved, their next scheduled run, all of that information is coming directly into this run without you having to double check anything or make sure it's approved or go into the employee card and make sure it's in the next run, et cetera. All of that is done through those automated updates that you're approving through the Greenshades HR portal and some of that admin side, and obviously driven by some of the settings that we have in the back end. So this is pulling all those employees into an actual pay run. And again, you can see some of these notification bubbles. These aren't necessarily errors. This is just specific content and information that's driving some of the tax and payroll information that we see here in the actual pay run. Nothing extravagant or surprising. It's just based on how we have some of these work locations set up, what W-4s we have completed, et cetera. And we leave a lot of this just so we can show it in a demo. Obviously, if you have an appropriate setup or you're going through these, you're not going to see a notification bubble on every single employee, obviously, right? So from here, you also have the capability of manually adding in employees to a pay run as well. And again, as you think of other services, what you might be charged for, a lot of this are pieces that you may have additional costs related to. And when you think of a cloud-based payroll system, you can see the save and exit here. And you might have noticed that I actually opened up an open pay run. As I go through this process, I can make edits, I can make changes, I can import information. I can also save and exit. But as I make any of those adjustments, there's an auto-save process happening through this payroll as well. So not only can I manually add one-off employees, but as I go through some of these steps, I can also manually add in information. So if I need to import time from other systems, whether you're using Greenshades timesheets or a different time offering, we're not requiring you to use Greenshades time entry offering. We understand that there's a lot of industry-specific time options out there, things like POS systems, et cetera, and we're not trying to compete specifically with those. We're not going to become a POS company as well or anything along those lines. So if you need to import time from any system, you have the capability of doing that. We also have a backend API that we've built where if you want to make that automated, or you're working with a reseller like Dynavistics or your time entry contacts at the other companies, et cetera, and they want to help automate those processes, that's exactly what that API is for, whether that's related to time or some of these other options like benefits possibly, you do have the capability of exporting and importing information to Greenshades in an automated fashion through that API. So as I look at hours here, I have the manual capability of making some adjustments. I can see work weeks broken down on a per employee basis. I can make edits if needed as well. And through here, you're going to see kind of links anytime I open up any of these bubbles. This is if you see a setting, you see something that doesn't make sense to you or that you need to make a manual adjustment to, we're reminding you through these steps. You can make manual adjustments within the actual pay run itself, but we also want to remind you, you can also click that link, make a long-term adjustment if needed. It'll take you to a settings page where you make the adjustment and then save it. And then that will drive those changes moving forward on all future pay runs. So if I need to make any manual adjustments for this, say I know this employee actually only worked 36 hours or something along those lines, I have the capabilities of doing that. We're going to calc this information as I actually move through these other steps. If I need to make manual adjustments, I have the capability of doing it. And again, I can add manually the time, hours, et cetera, but I could also split this information out. If I know an employee worked into multiple departments, multiple positions, and they have multiple different compensations across those, then that's exactly how this information is to be driven. I'm going to see multiple different lines for those different pay rates, et cetera, and we're going to be breaking that down through the actual pay run itself and then doing this calc up top. You can also compare to your last pay run. Obviously, as we're doing things like reconciliation, et cetera, you might be doing that at times. And you might have seen that notification bubble up top that was saying, hey, we saw you made a change. You put 36 hours here. We saved that, right? You don't have to worry about doing that save and exit at any given time or ensuring the pay run is saved. We're doing that anytime we're seeing you make a change through the actual open pay run itself, right? So as I move from employees all the way to earnings, et cetera, I'm moving a little slow here. Just know you can move as fast or as slow as you need to. You can export this information. You can make mass edits and changes and re-import it back in. There's lots and lots of options. You don't have to do this on a per record or per line item basis directly in the payroll. It really just depends on what fits your business model, what fits your needs. We just give you all of the options along the way. There is also a full audit log of who's making changes, when, and how directly in our system that you can pull at any given time based on what admin is actually logged in. So if you have multiple administrators that maybe some of them have access to time and they're importing in the time, and then maybe you have HR contacts that are coming here, they need to make a one-off benefit change or anything along those lines, you can allow whoever you need or want to have access directly to this payroll module. And then if they have limited access to some of those other modules, you don't want them to have access to payroll specifically, then you can have that as well. There are limited administrative capabilities that are pretty flexible through Greenshades payroll. So you can work through that setup however it might make sense for your team. And we're happy to guide you through that implementation as well. So again, going through deductions here, this is exactly what you would expect on the benefits and deduction side, whether that's related to health, 401k, or if you have any other health benefits or deductions happening through this. And then as we're doing things like PTO accrual or garnishments, this is where that's happening as well. Through these next 3 steps, benefits, deductions, and arrears, this is where PTO accruals, garnishments, et cetera, are happening directly in the pay run, but not with any specific input or need from the end user who's running payroll. That's all based off the backend settings, some of the settings that are based on that actual employee card, if you're setting up garnished wages, et cetera, and all the way to arrears, if maybe it's a loan or there's a specific fine or penalty that they are having to pay from that garnished wage, then that will be tracked through that arrears module specifically in here as well. And again, through all these steps, I can add anything manually, I can upload Excels, whatever I need to do through these steps, I have the capabilities of doing, right? So same idea again through benefits. This can be driven by Greenshades benefits module that's on the RHR side. And there are packages with Greenshades payroll were based on essentially your HR and tax need. You're going to drive those packages, really only 4 packages. Either do you need high level HR services? Do you need the higher level tax services? Typically, if you're in 3 or more states, you have a couple hundred employees, you see yourself growing into additional states, the higher level tax option is going to make sense for you. And then based on what you might need on that HR side, whether you want benefits enrollment, you want your employees enrolling in benefits online, you want some of these higher level HR options like the HR documents, onboarding, things of that nature, then you're going to need that higher level HR side as well, right? So that's exactly where these pieces come in. But if you're not using Greenshades benefits module, you're not using some of these additional HR pieces, you're not losing functionality in payroll. It's just some of that automated process is going to change for you. You might be importing this then on an ongoing basis as those changes are happening in a different benefit system, or you might be utilizing that API long-term if you wanted to make it a more automated process. It just depends on how are you handling this information, where is it coming from, and then how do you handle that today, and then what would the new process be in moving to a cloud-based payroll provider like Greenshades, right? Great. All the way down to arrears. Again, arrears is primarily based on how you're handling garnishments today, as well as if you're doing things like, employees purchase programs through you. Maybe they buy things like uniforms or something along those lines, or you do employer loans, right? This is where that arrears module will come into handy. Not all companies utilize arrears, just kind of explaining a little bit about why you would or why some other employers do. Right? Same idea through this though, as you can build this out, you can import information as needed. So once I get to this review and submit screen, this is essentially the pre-check that you would see in some other systems, but this isn't closing anything out. Once I actually get a lot of other payroll systems, especially some of those legacy systems, you actually have to, pre-submit payroll, and there's a lot of editing and a lot of rolling back if you actually need to see this pre-check screen in some other systems. This is really just a calculated screen that's happening from everything else you've done in the pay run. And you can see we're showing you all the general calculations you would see here up top as needed in this pre-check screen. And this is prior to submission. So this is you double checking everything. Everything looks like as you would expect and as you want it to prior to actually cutting those checks. You can still make edits all the way up into the screen and roll back to any of these steps. So if you want to see somebody's pay stub, you still need to make any edits to these actual fields, you have the capabilities of doing that. You can see all these different buckets. If I, see there was a miscalc based on what input I had in here, I can manually still change it. It will recalc all of the other steps based off what you're editing here, right? So this is very, very different. And when I talk about things like modern and new features and what the process looks like through Greenshades, this is one of the screens that provide you the most control on a per employee basis, per check basis, per pay run basis. It goes all the way down, right? So essentially, you can make edits throughout this pay run. You can keep this pay run open all the way up into when you need to actually cut the check date and still make edits. And even on the check date, if you need to make edits, you can do so. And I'm talking about having a pay run open, for an extended period of time. That's not how I would expect or how most businesses are going to run payroll. They're going to come in here when needed. They're going to fly through these steps, go one by one, and then hit submit within 5, 10, 15 minutes, really depending on what the information importing and exporting might look like, what edits you need to make. You obviously, as I've moved through this, hopefully you can see, you can definitely, fly through a pay run if needed. Whether there's a, 5,000 employees in this payroll, 50, 500, it's scalable, it's variable, it moves exactly the same way, regardless of employee count, regardless of how many different companies you might have to be running payroll for. You can do it very quickly if that's how your company is set up and what you would like to do. You can also leave it open for an extended period of time. As you saw, I kind of flipped back through to these other steps just to talk about editing. If I did edit on a step instead of that last review and submit screen, it doesn't block or stop anything. As you can see, it did a recalc when I actually hit back to this screen just to look for any new or additional changes that I might have had, right? So when I talk about it not being locked, that's what I mean. You can leave this open right here, go back to our main payroll dashboard, and you can see I have that pay run still open, right? And when I'm ready to close it out, I can hit continue. It's going to take me back to that 7th step. I hit submit, and then it will actually take me to our review page for the reports that we have on a post payroll basis. Things like the post check, the ACH file that might need to go to your bank if you have to do things like a positive pay file, anything like that. You have the capabilities of seeing that once you actually cut checks directly in Greenshades. This pay run gave me an error, probably because I posted something incorrect on one of these older pay runs. But I'm going to flip open this report section here in a second, and that's all it's rolling through. You have the capabilities of actually downloading an entire zip file with all of those reports as well. So whether you need to, see the liability amounts or see your actual benefits information and send it anywhere else, you can do that in a post pay run report. But you also have the capability to going back to any previous payroll and exporting that information at any given time. You also have the capabilities of going to Greenshades general support or report screen and downloading any of these canned reports we might have, which we obviously have a number of now, and that's across payroll and HR. There's a lot of different options in here now, and especially related to payroll, you can favorite specific ones that you care about. You can also do things like create customized reports. And what that means, I think when people hear customized reports, they think, they have to come in here and build a report every time. That's not the case. You're building a template one time, especially if it's a repeatable report you might need based on every data field that Greenshades has available. And obviously now, as we are the payroll system, we see ourselves as the payroll and HR system of record. And we roll information back to the general ledger, regardless of what accounting package you might be utilizing. So we see ourselves kind of as general ledger agnostic. So as you're moving from some of these legacy systems and moving to hopefully a cloud-based system, we can write back to both general ledgers as you're doing things like parallels, whether that's with payroll or with the systems themselves. We can write back to really any general ledger. So that's what's happening here is you have the capability of downloading any of those reports, but also building a report template as needed to actually see whatever information you want to export out from Greenshades. Again, full log of information. And if you need a full data export for any given reason, you have the capabilities of doing that. So if you're not utilizing our benefits module and we're not sending an EDI to health, dental, vision providers, but you want to send them updated information that is with the payroll information that we have, you still have the capabilities of doing that directly from the system, right? Cool. So I think we have about 9 minutes left. I think it's probably the right time for questions or comments. I know I see a couple of chat bubbles. So if we're seeing anything in the chat that we need to address or we want to address now, might be the right time.
Hi, thank you so much for that. Rob, first and foremost, fabulous information. You really covered a lot. And what I really appreciate is how you walk us through, say, the benefits, the solid company that Greenshades is, especially where you don't float money. That's a huge benefit. Thank you so much for pointing out so many things like that. People are interested. We got a couple of questions, so I'll go ahead and ask them. The question we have is, do you have application tracking full HR module? So can you touch base on some of the HR pieces that you pull in, and then touch base on the connection and integration with payroll, please?
Yep, definitely. So Greenshades does not currently have a applicant tracking system. We work with so many different clients that utilize industry-specific applicant tracking systems and so many other ones. We do have a partnership with a company called Jazz HR. They're in our marketplace. If you go to greenshades.com right now, they're there, and you can reach out to us, and we'll pass along their information or vice versa to you and have them work with you guys in Dynavistics. However, if you're using a different applicant tracking system, today we're looking to partner with multiple other ones, but we also pull in that information via the API. So we don't have an applicant tracking system, but we do have an onboarding module post you knowing that applicant is ready to actually hire and go through the onboarding process. So from onboarding all the way through all the other HR information, they're going to go through an onboarding process that you customize and you essentially set up through Greenshades, whether that's any HR document that you have on your side that they need to sign, complete, or acknowledge, as well as things like federal or state W-4s, I-9s, direct deposit setup, and then setting up that general profile with their general address, their dependents, anything that you require. There's lots and lots of options through Greenshades, but really you decide what they see and what you fill out and what goes into our payroll system. Right. So that's generally the onboarding process. And then our HR stack is pretty expansive post that. We have those modules that I just mentioned along with that onboarding piece, as well as things like time entry and expense reporting, employee evaluations, and time off requests. And I touched a little bit through the payroll demo and through some of the slides that we have a garnishes module as well as time off accruals. All that information is updated on the pay stub. We post pay stubs online, obviously, W-2s, 1095Cs, and we have a mobile app and an optimized mobile experience for people who don't want to download the app.
Wonderful. Fantastic. So what you're saying is yes, there is some HR built in there. Maybe not the hire piece, but once they're hired, you can totally handle it. And then access can be granted when they want it, where they want it, and on what device they want.
Correct. Yep.
Beautiful. So I have a question about interfacing with third-party scheduling systems. And someone asked something very specific. It's Einstein too. But can you talk to, in general, maybe you'd like to answer that, but in general, how do you interface with third-party scheduling systems?
Yeah, so the third-party scheduling systems is something that we are working to do through that API. Right now, we're focused on time. So it would really depend on what that interface looks like for time at the moment. Are you using a different time system than scheduling system, or there's one and the same? And then how is that information passing today? And then what are we, quote unquote, replicating or changing? Right, is what we would look at through Greenshades. Because today we have time information going through that API, scheduling is on deck, but not current. So I'd say by the end of Q2, we're probably going to be there. And specific to the Einstein question, we would have to talk one-on-one a little bit. So I think if you're asking a question that in depth, you might be a great candidate to have one of those one-on-one discussions and get a $50 gift card, right?
Fantastic. Love that idea. Love the next step. Okay, so we do have another question about the length of time it takes to go through an implementation. How quick can people get up and get rolling on this?
Yeah, so really just depending on the size of company as well as where your information is coming from. If you're on a current system that we have a heavy integration with, obviously like GP or something along those lines, then we can fast track that implementation. 6 to 12 weeks is our general timeline. Obviously, size of company, number of EINs, number of employees, things of that nature, where the information is coming from, are all going to dictate that general timeline. But 6 to 12 weeks is the correct timeline for us to start rolling out the check process. So that's net to check essentially in 6 to 12 weeks. And then some of these larger ancillary modules for things like benefits enrollment is going to be dependent upon when your next open enrollment is. Are we doing qualifying life events today, et cetera? And we're generally going to also be doing multiple kind of implementations through those HR pieces as well as payroll, which might be dictated by the size of your team and things of that nature. So 6 to 12 weeks is the quote unquote easy answer, but some of these other options might dictate a different timeline as well that we want to talk about.
Sure, that makes sense. So I will say that Dynavistics has worked with Greenshades for a number of years, and we have watched you guys grow. And we are very excited about this new functionality that you're adding and the ability to split your payroll implementation off of your ERP implementation. That low risk strategy makes sense for a lot of people, especially when you have so many people who need to access payroll and HR information on demand, anywhere, anytime. That self-service module is just brilliant.
Definitely. I definitely appreciate those kind of words. And obviously we appreciate working with Dynavistics very much, especially as you guys focus on the ERP side. There's a lot of historical information that you have to decide what comes over and what all needs to be set up related to that ERP. So you more of all people understand how large of a project that is in and of itself. So when you
Yeah,
start thinking of these other large backend processes like payroll, it makes a lot of sense to look for a modern approach to some of these challenges.
sounds like a plan. So for everyone on, we did have a couple people who registered who weren't able to attend. So we're going to take this video, we're going to put it into the blog post, and we are going to send an email out so you can have the video and some information from Greenshades. We'll send it in an email, you have it right at your fingertips. And then if there's any questions, or if you'd like to have a personal demo or question, conversation, we'd be more than happy to have that. So thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Thank you,
one.
Pamela. You too.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.